Hello, I'm Sheila Warren, and welcome to Money Reimagined. Today, we're bringing you the second part of our series on non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. And for the first time, we're doing this on Clubhouse. In the first episode in this series, which we highly recommend you listen to first, we spoke with Nana Decking, who spent most of his life as a fine art dealer at prestigious institutions like Sotheby's, before taking on a role as the CEO of the blockchain for art company called Artery. We talked on that show about the fundamentals. What are NFTs and what might they offer? And about how new models of ownership are poised to revolutionize the art world. And we tapped Nana's experience to explore how control over information dictates how value is determined for creative works, whether those works are physical or digital. Now, this week, we're focusing on people on the other side of the transaction, the creator and the collector. Like many things, artists turned increasingly digital as artists explore new mediums enabled by technology and new venues for displaying their artwork. For creators, this can generate new exposure, but it can also introduce issues around monetization. Platforms that host content from creators often take a cut from any sales, generally over 5%, sometimes as high as 50%. And that's not even getting into the complexities around the potential for replication, misattribution, or the inability to reap the benefits of art being shared or repurposed. And that's strictly relevant when it comes to digitally native art. So, is it fair to be limited in your livelihood by your medium? And who exactly is empowered and encouraged to present and sell their work to traditional venues? Now, there hasn't been a ton of work done to analyze the racial gap in art in the United States, but the few studies that do exist have found that more than 75% of artists in America whose primary source of income comes from the arts are white. By contrast, only 7.5% are Black. As of 2018, the total combined auction value of Black artists made up just 1.2% of the global auction market. And that dwindles to just 0.26% when you exclude sales of Basquiat's. The racial gap among artists in America isn't, of course, a question of desire, talent, or ability. It's about money. For one thing, art school can be very expensive, often costing upwards of $120,000 or more. And that becomes even harsher when you factor in that only about 10% of art school graduates actually go on to make a living as artists. And even that group is super top heavy, meaning most of the income goes to a very, very small number of artists who, like Basquiat, managed to hit the big time. A formal art education often comes with access to the network of galleries and collectors that Nana described last week, but it's not something everyone can afford. So, can new models like NFTs help address these inequities and provide new models of economic value to creators? To clarify, the NFT space is new and still quite small. It's estimated there have been just over $76 million in NFT art sales total, which is pretty minuscule compared to the overall $67 billion fine art market. But there's a reason NFTs have drawn the attention of the crypto economy, and today we're going to explore why, and also talk more generally about the Black crypto art ecosystem and how NFTs can be a tool for economic empowerment. To get into the details, we're joined by two guests, Cuy Sheffield, who's the head of crypto at Visa, and who on the side is deeply exploring crypto art, and Lethabo Huma, a digital artist from Pretoria, South Africa. Before we greet them, let's say hello to my co-host, Michael Casey. Hey, Michael.
Hello, Sheila.
So it seems like even in this 1 week, the short time since our episode with Nana, NFTs have absolutely blown up. They're dominating crypto Twitter, and not to mention conversations here on Clubhouse. They're just top of mind for so many different kinds of people.
Yeah, I don't know if I texting you at like 1 a.m. last night. I certainly was.
You were.
I was going down the rabbit hole. I mean, it just seemed to me that and of course I've been of some of the things like the Nyan cat selling for 300 ETH on Friday.
Yep.
But as I sort of read in last night, just going through Twitter, I mean, the past week, it just seemed fascinating. I mean, we had former MLB star, Major League Baseball, Micah Johnson, who's now an artist in his own right. This really interesting Aku, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's inspired by Black empowerment, dreams, and that sort of drawing, bidding in these really interesting new NFT art forms, digital art forms. This Eula Beats project is fascinating. That's combining music beats with generative art. The whole generative art thing is amazing. There's AIs being used algorithms, essentially the creator of the algorithm. Mark Cuban is calling this a revolution.
Right, revolution.
I mean, it's just like Gary Vaynerchuk is into this space right now. It's just almost as in the past week or 2 weeks, it has really taken off.
Yeah, and of course that reflects the amount of activity that was happening prior, right? When something bursts into kind of popular consciousness, and particularly if it attracts sort of celebrity investment, there's been a lot of work that's happened prior to that. So why don't we turn to our guests to kind of talk about that? And they've both been paying attention to this for far longer than it's erupted into popular consciousness. So Cuy, let's start with you. I'd love to just hear about your journey to NFTs. You know, I know you're really interested in crypto art as a collector. You've also created NFTs. So talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me. And quick disclaimer, I'm here in my personal capacity as a crypto art collector. So these are my own opinions and do not reflect those of my employer. So I really, started late last fall, and I was spending a lot of time thinking about, how crypto can become a vehicle for Black economic empowerment. And I felt that, crypto is simultaneously, it exists as a new technology, an industry, and an asset class. And with each of these realms, there are opportunities to help, close racial wealth disparities. And just thinking about crypto as a new asset class, first there's Bitcoin, where we've seen a ton of energy and activity within the Black community, buying, Bitcoin. But we also see crypto has the ability to create, to take existing assets and make them more accessible. And so it's been fascinating to really see this evolution where crypto started as really just a new asset, a new form of money, monetary system like Bitcoin. Then crypto started to become a way to represent existing currencies, like stable coins. And then now crypto is becoming a way and a new form factor to represent digital media and art. And there's just such an opportunity around, how to lower the barrier to entry for artists to be able to monetize their work and reach a global collector base. And then to take art as an asset class, which I think is $65 billion, and make it easy to collect. And so for context, I grew up, around art. My mom is an artist, but I've never purchased a piece of physical art, as an adult. It was always seemed like it's a lot of work. Like, where do I get it? How do I hang it? Like, how do I ship it? It's like hard to resell. And so it just wasn't something that I was doing. And I saw, the Beeple drop that happened.
Right.
I think it was, in December. And it was amazing. I was like, this digital artist, Beeple, sells millions of dollars of crypto art. And so that really got my attention, that there's something here. This is a new platform. So I want to check it out just as a collector. Let me try and buy my first piece of crypto art. And while Beeple's work is amazing, it just didn't really resonate with me personally. And as I thought about kind of crypto and Black economic empowerment, it's like, there have to be some Black artists here. I want to support Black artists. How do I do that? And so I just started asking people, who are some Black artists, in this space? And some of the folks at the major marketplaces, started sending me links, and I went through them. And the first one that I saw was Lethabo's piece called Midnight Blues. And the moment I opened the link, there was just this emotional reaction where I was like, I have to own this. Like, this is incredible. Not only is it just some of the most impressive digital artwork that I've seen, but it was this multi-dimensional piece where it, was one created by an artist, a young Black woman that depicted, Black culture and a Black woman in a very positive way, and then was animated. And so it was like, I thought it was like a Harry Potter painting. Where it was kind of living and breathing and moving. And I had this emotional reaction where I was like, I want to own this and I want to support this artist. And so I was like, okay, let me bid on this. So I put the first bid in. I was like, all right, I think I could get this. Half an hour later, I got outbid. I was like, there's a rival collector here. So then I used to play basketball. So this competitive aspect came out. I was like, I'm not losing this piece. Like I need this piece. And so then I found Lethabo on Twitter. I had to DM her. I was like, I need this piece. Like, can I buy this from you? So ended up getting her to graciously agree to sell the piece to me. And that was the beginning. And then I started to see that all of Lethabo's amazing work. And then this isn't just Lethabo. There is a Black crypto art movement that is building. And there are Black artists from all across the world that are creating amazing digital artwork. There are Black curators that are helping to put that artwork together into exhibitions in a metaverse. And then there are Black collectors who are looking at this as a part of their portfolio. And I think when you combine investment and consumption, where I couldn't justify spending that much money on art if it was hard to sell, then it's just purely purchasing it to view. Once you have the liquidity where you're buying and selling a token, you can now justify this as this is a part of my portfolio that I want to own crypto art. I want to support Black artists. And I think that these assets will be very valuable because it's amazing work that can now be seen by the world. So I'm hooked. This is now a passion, borderline of an obsession, and trying to do everything I can to support Black artists in the space.
Well, spoken like a true collector, Cuy, it sounds like you've really caught the bug. And what I think is really interesting is you're saying not only does the medium provide these new ways of representing art and being an artist. So your Harry Potter picture frame, I kind of love that image. I think we all can visualize what that looks like. But the medium itself is innovative in a way that really speaks to you. And of course, Lethabo's particular work speaks to you as well, but also the liquidity aspect of it, the idea that if you decided you wanted to modify your collection in whatever fashion, you would have immediate access to do that, something that is also very appealing and has kind of moved you away from being distant from the art market to really, really engaged in it. So with that, maybe we'll turn to you, Lethabo. I'd love to just hear about your journey. You started off as a more traditional artist and switched to the digital medium. That sounds like about 3 years ago. And I'd love to hear about that transition, what digital art as a medium really enables you to depict, kind of to Cuy's points. But then also we'd love to hear you discuss how as a digital artist you are thinking about the business around your art, how you're monetizing the art and how that relates to Cuy's experiences as a collector on the other side.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I think for me, when I started off, traditional art was something that I did as a hobby, like a part-time thing. And I think towards my final year of high school, that's when I sort of, I got an opportunity to exhibit at some art show, and it was quite well received. And I just thought that maybe it was something that I should do part-time. At the time, I was about to study computer science. So I was sort of like a part-time artist and sort of a full-time student. And then I'm a person that likes exploring with different kinds of media. And I think in that exploration, that's how I found digital art. I think apart from it being, well, personally for me, being something that's it's more convenient in terms of cost. Especially when you get commissions and things like that. Also also cost of traveling. You see, when you're a traditional artist, if you get commissioned, yes, you can get paid, but then you'd need transport to travel and get the canvas, art supplies are expensive, and so forth and so forth. So I think that was also another contributing factor that sort of drew me into digital art. But yeah, that's basically how I got into digital art. I was just sort of intrigued by the space, and digital art is still relatively new. So I think that's what keeps it exciting, because these companies and these software companies that provide these drawing softwares are always trying to sort of constantly improve them, constantly sort of put in new little elements and tools that we can use to create. So I think that also just keeps me on my toes and excited to sort of keep on creating digitally. But yeah, that's how I started off, till now.
So really a question to both of you, but Lethabo, maybe you first. Just as I kind of remember from the early days of crypto as well, there are people who just kind of can't get their head around what this is, right? They can't, just the idea that art can be digital for one, and also the idea that you can create a uniquely identified NFT version of that. And so you're seeing the same questions. Just to give a little bit of an anecdote here. As I was trolling around last night, I noticed the senior art critic at New York Magazine, Pulitzer Prize winning author, on how to be an artist, responded to something on Twitter saying, "What is an NFT?" ? I think he might have been trolling, because he then later on asked the question, "What is a blockchain?" And I just think he kind of at least should have that sense of what it is. but the sense is that there's still this traditional critics, the art collectors and so forth, for whom this thing doesn't seem to make sense. How could you possibly have art in this kind of ephemeral environment? Does that matter? I mean, do you need to convince the traditional art world of the value of what you're doing, or is the beauty of this the fact that you're reaching out to a whole new set who get to set the standards for what is collectible and what's valued, precisely because they're coming at it from a different perspective?
Well, I think it doesn't really matter. I don't think NFTs should be there, or we should constantly have to try and sort of convince sort of people that are more into just traditional art to sort of jump into the bandwagon. But I do think it's important to always sort of, since crypto art is still new, I think it's always important to always just trying to educate someone about what crypto is, what the blockchain is, the importance of digital art if they are interested. But I think that's all we can really do. I think the beauty of crypto art comes from the fact that those who know, those who understand, and we're more than willing to sort of explain. But I don't think it's a thing of us having to sort of convince anyone the importance of crypto art. I think the more research you do into crypto art, you sort of will understand why it's important. Yeah.
So Cuy, assuming we do, and there is already, as Lethabo says, you don't need to. There's already a market that's evolving here, and presumably it will grow. Where do you see the most exciting use cases for this? How does this technology transform the business models, and also for collectors, for that matter, to participate?
Yeah, so maybe to just go back to the last question for a second. I do not care what the traditional art world thinks. I've never engaged with the traditional art. I've never gone to an auction. I've never bought a physical piece. I don't care. And many of my friends don't care either. Like, we don't care. We don't interact with the traditional art world, but we interact with NFTs and we interact with crypto art. And so I think this is onboarding new people into becoming art collectors that never would have been in the traditional world, in a much more fun and social, an easier way to do that. So I don't think it really matters at all. And I think the other way that I approach it is, Instagram kind of made it very easy for people to be photographers, or at least feel like you're a photographer. And you create something that you put a filter on it, you can reach a lot of people that you couldn't have before. And I think crypto art lowers that barrier where, it's easy for anyone to create a piece of art that can reach a lot of people. And I think that that's a fantastic thing. And I think, I'm no expert on the traditional art world, but when I talk to Black artists, they have not been welcomed into it. They've been excluded from it in many ways. And so I think what's so powerful and amazing to me is now the judge of what art is valuable, isn't a small group of people at a gallery, it's the internet. And who creates global internet culture? It's young Black people. That's who creates it. And now, like, who curates it and who promotes it. And so when you take that power of determining, what art is valued, and you can use it to be able to support the artists that you like, I think that's what's so powerful about crypto art. And then I also, from a collector's perspective, after I've gotten involved in crypto art, it's kind of changed the way that I felt about social media, where to me, the idea of a like is like the most shallow thing in the world. Like, Lethabo is spending, hours or days or months creating beautiful artwork. If she posts it on Instagram or Twitter and I just like it, like, what does that mean? I comment, looks good, like, good piece. It doesn't mean anything. And so I think someone tweeted the other day, buying is the new liking. Now there's a way that you can express, not only is that something that you like, but that's something that you're encouraging, and that's something you want to invest in. And so what you're purchasing with the token is not just an image, you're purchasing a social connection to that artist, where now I'm incentivized to help Lethabo, become one of the most famous artists in the world, because she deserves it, because she's created this incredible work.
Mm-hmm. So, and there's so much there I want to follow up on, because I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, that's why in my monologue, where I was really trying to point out, right, there is this historical redlining that's happened to Black artists and Black creators from the traditional establishment. And we certainly see that reflected across other parts of our society, which is something we talked about on the show quite a bit, like which parts of society have easy and ready access and which have to kind of fight their way into access to things like banking systems or whatever it might be. And I'm reminded of when I was on the board of the SF Symphony's Symphonics, which is like the youth symphony, right, kind of board. And they were like, well, how do we get more young people interested in coming to symphony? And the answer ultimately was, well, you don't really. You create a nightclub at the symphony and you have musicians that interact with people, and then they become, it's it has to be a different model. And so what I really love about crypto art, digital art and crypto art is exactly the things you're talking about. It's an opportunity to have a different critic, being an art critic is going to be a very, very different thing when it comes to digital art. It already is proving to be such, because you have the opportunity for a lot more people to weigh in a formal way on what reflects and resonates with them. And I think that also the idea here is, it may be that previously, like I didn't buy traditional art for a long time because I couldn't afford it. I simply straight up couldn't afford it. And so, but if I could have had an opportunity to support an artwork or demonstrate in some way, or even like fractionally own it, right? That would have actually meant something emotional to me, because there are pieces that I have the reaction to that you've described, that you have to Lethabo this particular piece, that I also felt that way. And I would have welcomed a chance to engage in some fashion in support of that, at the time, contemporary artist. So I think there's a lot of models here where there's going to be an engagement that happens between the collector and the creator that is more instant. There's going to be the idea of being like a fan of someone is going to have meaning that actually supports that creator in a very visceral and meaningful way during their lifetime. We talked on our episode with Nana about how so many artists only achieved posthumous fame, let alone prosperity. Their estates became very wealthy. They themselves, died broken a garret of horrible diseases that were a result of the fact they couldn't make a living wage or an income. So Lethabo, I want to go back to you and ask one more question, and I'll flag for our viewers on Clubhouse, our listeners on Clubhouse rather, if you have a question, please throw your hand up. Around 1:30, around the half-hour mark, we're going to be opening up to listener questions for the next 5 minutes or so. We'll keep the dialogue among the four of us. But Lethabo, I'd love to talk to you about how you think as an artist about this monetization question. How do you think about engagement, people that are captivated by your work, of which there are so many? How do you decide where and how to release a piece of art? Like, what's the process around that piece of it? I'd love to learn more about that.
So you talk about the process of promoting it.
That's right. So after you've created a piece of art and it's ready to put up for sale or viewing, or what does that look like, right? So the traditional model is kind of like it's a gallery show or whatever. What does that look like in the digital world, and how do you convert that into this monetization model?
Yeah, well, before NFTs, it was just simply like just uploading a random picture on Instagram, really. Mm-hmm. It's about posting, doing promos, so sort of like maybe doing some upcoming announcements before you upload your work, using a few hashtags on all of your social media, uploading it on your website. But that was essentially it. That's the most you could really do when it came to just sharing your work with the world. Yeah.
Great. And so then when it comes to NFTs, how do you think about that? Like, do you formally issue an NFT and you announce that and release that? How do you decide which platforms to use? All these kinds of questions. We'd love some information about that process for you.
Okay, I think it's still a bit the same, just uploading and promoting your work. I think what I usually do is I'd usually announce that I'd be uploading an NFT a few days before, sort of on my Twitter, Instagram, and also we have Discord channels. Super has a Discord channel. I think a lot more other crypto platforms probably have Discord channels, and those are just where most collectors and artists are. So yeah, and also on Telegram. I think Super does have a Telegram group. So you just share sort of where you're allowed to share. Yeah, anywhere where you're allowed to share, and yeah, then you just tokenize your work, and once it's tokenized, you do the promotion thing again. But that's it. Yeah. Yeah. That's so what I've been doing, at least.
Yeah. One thing I love about this is it's kind of like, album drops, right? So like your artists back in the day, you'd have to like line up at whatever Tower Records or whatever and like wait, in line and get the thing and all that. And then you'd wait for an album to drop on your, whatever your listening app might be. And so similarly, we're seeing the ability of digital artists, a visual artist, to do this in a way that would have been impossible. It was just not possible until the advent of these kinds of opportunities. And then, the bidding that Cuy talked about is a really common phenomenon. So there are artists who now have, name recognition, who have really sparked tremendous interest in the community, and they're able to bid up, right? So it's not just that you have one set price, you can actually generate this kind of interest and demonstrate the value of your work using an active market that's highly liquid, which is just unbelievably powerful compared to, just for the sake of argument, traditional model where your work is in a gallery and someone comes along and there's a fixed price and they maybe know the dealer and there's like a backroom kind of negotiation. This sort of stuff is not really what happens here. It's out there, it's visible, it's public, it's a open transaction, it's an open bidding process. And that's an extraordinarily powerful way of catapulting awareness of this. And I certainly think that, the generation of digital natives, this is already very familiar to the Instagram, let's call it generation, but we're growing a generation of crypto natives for whom this is going to be a very normal way of interacting. And again, that fluidity, the creation of a stakeholder set that's interested in a particular artist's contributions to art and to society is going to create all kinds of models that we can't even yet imagine. So Michael, maybe I'll turn it over to you for comments before we open it up to the Clubhouse room.
Yeah, I'm just, as I said, folks, if you want to make any comments, ask any questions, I'm just going to do a quick shout out to some friends I see in there. There's Heidi Peace, there's Micah Johnson, who I communicated with last night and mentioned earlier, Kuntz, and Tully, of course, from CoinDesk, and others as well. Eric, I see there. Lovely to have you on joining us. And feel free, just as I said, put up your hands, and we'll incorporate you into the conversation. But Cuy, I want to actually throw something to you. It picks up a little bit about the way you were describing the opportunity you have. I like the phrase you said of buying is the new like, and that's a mean. And in our conversation last week with Nana Decking, we talked about this concept that, traditionally art collectors have played this role essentially as a benefactor. They, purchase art, then they'll sometimes, quite often, leaving it permanently on display in a museum, and in the process, therefore, serving the public interest in being able to view the art, but also indirectly, supporting the artist. It strikes me that in the NFT world, that we can kind of make an analogy here where the internet itself is the museum, and that the ownership and the support through the NFT brings into a kind of a benefactor role. I'm wondering whether that's a reasonable analogy, but beyond that, how can we really leverage this in a way, right? Is there a way to then change the culture around the ownership of cultural goods in a way that it is almost like, there's bragging rights, there's that ownership, but ultimately what you're doing is facilitating art itself for broad public consumption. And is there any tension there? Does it make it harder to actually raise money if people are just not being able to keep it for themselves?
Yes, I have a ton of thoughts there. I think kind of first, what's interesting about crypto art and NFTs, they enable you to directly speculate on culture and to be financially compensated for recognizing and creating global culture. And I think that becomes really powerful, particularly when you just think about kind of how marketing and how you promote things online. And so like Lethabo has her process of how does she promote something personally, but I feel like I'm on Letabo's team. Like I'm Letabo's head of marketing. I'm here to tell her to tell the world about her because her work is amazing. And I have made an investment in her in buying her early pieces. And so now I'm financially incentivized to share her with everyone I know. So I will annoy you because everyone I talk to, I'm going to show a picture of Letabo's pieces. And that didn't happen before. If I love Letabo's work and I support her on Patreon, that's great. I'm supporting her, but there's no upside for me, if her Patreons go from 100 people to 1 million people. And so now you kind of create this volunteer army. And I think we've kind of seen this in the crypto ecosystem where you have crypto communities where people, they're not employed by the project, but they have Bitcoin, and now they're talking about Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
That is now applying to artists, where there are now armies of people who love Lethabo's work and want to talk about it and share it with the world. And so that process of how does she get discovered is no longer dependent upon her. It's no longer dependent upon her hiring a team. Her collector base are now all investors and promoters of her. And I think if we really fast forward on this, what's really going to happen is Wall Street Bets is coming to art. And if you see the power that when you can mobilize a collective group of people around one common theme, and particularly when it's social activism, when there's a message and there's something broader than just money. And I think the opportunity of investing in and buying and promoting Black crypto artists, it is a type of activism. And it's a type where you can actually start to create change that you want to see. You could start to help people get recognized that haven't been recognized for work that they've been doing their entire career. And so when you can take a story, when you can take something that's that powerful and mobilize a group of people behind it, you could actually, start to change who are the artists that people talk about. And so that's why I'm so excited. And we've kind of just seen the early days of the power that communities have to determine and help determine which artists they want to support and to help those artists succeed.
And I really love this idea of monetizing evangelism, right? Like you have, not only are you talking about this work because you feel passionately about it and it speaks to you and you think it will speak to others and you want to support that entire movement, even beyond just one artist. There's actually also incentive in it for you to do so. Like you actually are rewarded for that in a way that is tangible, that is meaningful, and that is liquid. And you're right. It's a much more powerful ownership stake that you have in that particular model than you had in a more traditional kind of model. And that applies across all kinds of NFT creation, even beyond, digital artists. And I think that's something that's really interesting to see. There was a running joke, for a little while on Twitter when NFTs were just sort of really taking root, where very popular crypto Twitter folks, like celebrities, were getting their tweets actually made into NFTs, right? It was kind of a running joke, like, now I own that, I own the image of your tweet, right? It was pretty funny. But all jokes aside, I mean, there is this history, I'll speak to America now, there's a history in America, I think Cuy, something you alluded to earlier, of minority communities, not just Black community, minority communities, this general matter being appropriated, having some of their culture taken and used, by more mainstream industry, and not ever getting compensated for that or even recognized for it. And there's a history of lawsuits in the music business, right, around this happening with Black artists specifically, who try to assert like that riff was mine, or that whatever it might be belonged to me. And the challenges around trying to prove that in court, and the process you have to go through to actually get financial remuneration for something that you yourself created. Now you have a chance to actually do this in a much more visceral, powerful, and immediate way, where it's inarguable. It's inarguable that that was your creation, that it was there. It was like, it's there for everyone to see. And so I'm curious, Lethabo, to hear from you just about, how you feel about that ownership part of it, right? Like, is there something in there? Do you feel more confident in releasing your work? How do you feel about copycat artists and things like that, given the NFT model, and what comfort does that provide to you, or not?
I think NFT provides us, not just me, but just all of us digital artists, a lot of comfort. I think as digital artists, we've always been concerned with the authenticity about our work. We've always been concerned about people just, it's easy to just save someone's artwork and just claim it to be yours. So I think NFT art, the crypto space, like blocks that out, removes that. So yeah, I think for me, it's something that is comfortable and really removed that major worry when it came to protecting my work. Yeah.
I believe we have a hand up somewhere, Adam. I just, we've got Zach there. Okay. Why don't we have a question from Zach then? See if we can get this working, guys, because it's going to be, Adam's the master of the piping this through the right audio system. So Zach, why don't you fire away?
Hey everyone, I appreciate you guys calling me up. I joined this room because I saw Micah was in here, and I just wanted to say, Micah, I love you, dude. What you're doing is incredible. I've been trying to get my buddies to buy NFT and digital art for quite some time now, and I've been laughed at and ridiculed because none of them got it. But then they saw the Genesis drop, and all of a sudden, all my friends, rushed on Nifty to buy it because it all just made sense to them. And Genesis and the Cuy, it just all makes sense to me, and I get it, and I get what you're all about. So I just wanted to come up here to say that I love you, dude. You're an OG and a legend, and I can't wait to continue on this journey with you.
I'm going to speak for Micah, because let me tell you this, and this is so arrogant that this white man here is now saying I'm going to speak for Micah. But I'll tell you this: I asked Micah if he wanted to join us, and put your hand up, Mike, if you'd like to speak. But he said he was just here to listen and to be inspired by Lethabo. But I myself was inspired last night as I was looking through the feed on the and all that really cool stuff with that astronaut imagery, and it looks like a wonderful project. So thanks for your comments, Zach. And I see, hang on, this is getting confusing. If Michael wants to speak, he can. Oh, he is. He's in. All right, excellent. No, he's not. He's not in. He is. I'm sorry, getting confused.
Micah, why don't you go ahead and
Micah, go ahead. I'm so
then...
sorry. It's just trying to juggle between my phone and the thing here.
Thanks, Micah. Why don't you just tell us quickly, just introduce yourself quickly, and then feel free to respond. And then Heidi will go to you next.
Yep. So much better handled than me there, Sheila. Very, very
well,
I got you, Michael.
I just wanted to talk to Lethabo early. It's like, I think she's like ever since I got introduced to her work, I've drawn a lot of inspiration from the way you work with your color palettes and things like that. I really like the use of colors, like the blues I saw. And I just want to say, like, I'm a huge fan.
Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan.
And it's really cool too to see the artists that are coming out of South Africa. Like it's amazing. So like one of my favorite artists, definitely traditional, physical, digital, doesn't matter. Incredibly inspired by what you do. I did have a question though. Have you always been digital, or was there a point in your life where you were working physical with oils or in that manner, or strictly digital?
No, I've been digital for around about 3 years, but I've been traditional basically all my life. Really, I've always been a creator, but I've been digital just for only 3 years. Yeah.
And how do you find that balance between the physical and traditional? Like, do you ever feel like yourself going back, like I want to start painting, or do you do both at the same time?
Professionally, I'm just focused on digital art, but personally, I do some traditional work. Right now, I'm mainly focusing on smoke drawings and oil paints, but those are just personal pieces of mine. Yeah.
Awesome. And offline, before, I mean, Kai's pushing you. I'm going to be a massive collector here, and I'm very energized. If you're still doing physicals, I would, we could talk about that. I would love. I'm a huge fan of your work, like massive fan.
I just want to frame this for the audience who may not know Black crypto art. This is like having the two of the Avengers talking to each other, like on our show in our midst, just to kind of really frame what's happening right now. So I am very excited about this, but I also want to acknowledge that someone else came on up. So Michael, I think you want to go next.
Great to have you on. Heidi and I go back from a few years ago, and key figure in the LA art scene for a while, but I believe you're in Phoenix now, unless you've gone back to LA. Nonetheless, lovely to have you on board, and let's hear your thoughts. Heidi, peace.
Hi, Michael. It's so great to hear your voice, and Sheila, great to hear yours as well. Thank you for hosting this. I just wanted to make 2 comments. First of all, my mission over the past 4 years has really been to help build the blockchain ecosystem in Southern California and abroad, and primarily with business and government and universities. And there have been ups and downs on that journey, correlated to the market cap of Bitcoin in many cases. But what we always thought with our nonprofit was we truly saw the mass adoption and the mass understanding of blockchain when artists start to communicate and utilize blockchain. And I believe that we are seeing the beginning of that. I've been participating on Clubhouse and some of the rooms and where there are thousands of artists learning about cryptocurrency and how to mint their own NFT and then communicating that to the masses. And my heart is bursting with excitement. I truly see this now, the artists connecting with people that are not necessarily in this blockchain space and really bridging that. And so I'm just full of lots of hope for all of the opportunities that we see ahead of us for the artist community and for the blockchain community as well. My question to you, Lethabo, and it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been meeting with several artists, and some things that I've heard a string of consistency through our conversations is this opportunity to, yes, promote and get their work in the masses on the internet platforms. But there's also this unique opportunity to collaborate with other artists that perhaps we've never really seen before. So such as a musician might be able to connect with and collaborate with a visual artist and put those products together into one NFT. So I'm excited about that. Lethabo, do you have any thoughts around that? Are you seeing that as a possibility?
Yeah, definitely. I actually did a collaboration not so long ago with a bot actually who learns how to paint. So what the bot does is he used one of my paintings as a reference, and he sort of repainted it in his own style. So yeah, there's definitely probably going to be a lot more collaborations between artists and different kinds of other artists. So yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Very, very cool.
So cool. I love that idea, right? So one thing we've been talking about a lot, thank you so much, Heidi, for the question. We've been talking about quite a bit at the forum is this, how do we make, where are the intersections of different technologies happening? You know, where are we seeing robotics and AI and machine learning and blockchain and crypto, like all these things kind of coming together. So another example that came up just today is JP Morgan doing payments through satellites, like using space tech and combining that with crypto to actually make these payments like happen kind of in space that can then, you know, get around weather events and things like that. So here's another example, right? Where you're working with an actual bot that's kind of mimicking and imitating, and the whole like life imitates art kind of concept, you know, really making that very visceral and real is just extremely, extremely interesting. I'm curious also to see, I mean, to Heidi's point, one thing I've also been hearing quite a bit about is mixed media. And so how you can think about mixed media in an even broader way and create almost ensemble art, you know, so the way that you have like a jazz ensemble, for example, and everyone brings their instrument, but they create this thing that is very unique and exists at one time only and, you know, never again, right? Unless it's recorded. Similarly, you could actually have this kind of multimedia artistry where you brought together a group of different artists with different experiences or expertise and created a very unique piece of art that could be then sealed essentially via, you know, being created via the NFT model, and then kind of be super, it's non-fungible, but it's also completely unique in that way. So I'm curious if this is something that's far out in the future, or if you see this kind of new multimedia artistry being something that could work through collaboratives. Let's have what is your view on that?
No, definitely. I don't think it's something that's far out. I think NFTs really, I think the crypto art space allows there to be a lot of experimentation. So I don't think it's quite far out. I think we're yet to see a lot of very interesting collaborations. Yeah.
So I was particularly interested in this bot idea. I think we all were, Lethabo, when you talked about it. At this whole idea of generative art and the obvious natural intersection between that and this and NFTs and the digital art space. And we're seeing people now buying things like Eula Beats, which is generative algorithmically driven art with music beats attached to it. And there's a whole market forming around these things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is a lot of these, the bot perhaps that you dealing with it's an artist behind that who's basically written the algorithm to create the art in some sort of randomized form. So it has the input of the artist, and it reminds me in some respects of like Warhol working with, you know, people in the factory and giving them the inspiration and then calling that Warhol or somebody else. I mean, is that the right way to think about it? I mean, is there any concern that the humans end up being removed from this process and that now machines take over? Because some of the generative art is just truly beautiful. Or is it always going to throw back to that human inspiration? And you know, I'm going with this. Is this some dystopian, the machines that take? How do we keep the humanity in all this?
Well, I believe that I don't think that bots would be able to sort of wipe out or take over, sort of like, especially just speaking about like the art space. I think it's more of like a I need you, you need me type of thing. So yeah, definitely, I think bots will always need sort of inspiration from human beings. So they always need to use reference from like human art. So if there is no human art, I don't think there will be much interesting work that would be created. Yeah.
Cuy, have you taken an interest in?
Yeah, so as a collector, I think, you know, the potential for programmable art is fascinating. You know, the idea that it is living and breathing, and you know, the weather in the background could change, you know, based upon the weather outside, or I think there are a lot of really interesting things that you could do. And so, you know, still early, but trying to follow and understand it. I just want to go back to this point that like NFTs expand the definition of what is art. And you know, to me, it makes sense that there's so much content that is being created every day, you know, across the world, and what of that content, you know, which pieces of it should be collected, which pieces of it should be kept as internet history. The same way that there are, you know, physical pieces, both of art and other kind of objects that become part of, you know, history in the physical world. I think it's important to have a record of internet history. So I think it was Jacob from Zora that said, like, not every photo gets printed, like not every, you know, image or piece of digital content gets minted. And so there's this barrier of kind of what is something that is significant enough because it's new or it's different or it's creative that is worth kind of minting to establish some permanence and then some ownership of that, versus all of the content that we see kind of coming at us every day that we see once, then it disappears. What should be put in that record of internet history is, and that could be writing, that could be music, that could be all different types of things that now become, I'd say, internet artifacts. And that kind of is a broader definition than just art in one thing.
So Cuy, I'd love to make that a little more personal for you. You know, that when I became aware of your interest in this was because I saw something that you tweeted about when you took a piece of history and you created an NFT about it. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that if you're comfortable.
Yes, I think that the other theme here that's really interesting is like NFTs are, you know, collectors are becoming artists and artists are becoming collectors. Like exactly. I just saw Lethabo just, you know, picked up 2 pieces from Super. So it's like these things are going together, and I think artists are the best collectors. As a collector, I've never been a good artist, but I'm like, I want to understand this. Let me try and create a piece of art. And you start to see these collaborations together. And so I had a story that was meaningful to me that, you know, I thought about and like had in my mind for a long time. And my dad had sent me an image. It was kind of a census record of my grandfather. It was just this really powerful image that had this kind of emotional meaning to me. I was like, this is an image I want to exist. Like, I want to create kind of this image in a story. I want to mint it, put it on a blockchain, and I want to pass this down to my kids or my grandkids someday if I'm lucky enough. And so it's just this moment of, there's so many things that happen in the physical world, so many things that happen in the digital world. What are the things that you want, you know, an anthropologist 100 years from now, when they're looking back at internet history in 2021, like, what do you want them to be able to see? Because who knows what happens to what I posted on Instagram like last night? Like, that's not going to be a part of the historical record. So I think that it creates these tools, and lowers the accessibility, the barrier so that I haven't created a piece of physical art since I was in kindergarten. But I was like, let me try and create a piece of digital art. And it's something fun that I can do. And I think it helps you to establish, I'm really interested in this notion of a digital cultural identity. That, I want to be able to have something that, follows me around online. And so if anyone interacts with me or comes across me, they know more about who I am. And who I am is more about more than just my job. It's more than just kind of what I had for dinner yesterday. So what are the things that really resonate and make me who I am? And I feel like art and writing and kind of self-expression, these are all areas to do that. Traditionally hard to be able to show online. NFTs and crypto art enable that.
And this is something you and I kind of talked about a lot, is digital personhood, and the idea that who you are online, you can represent that in a certain way, and that there's an art to that. And so even more beyond the kind of time capsule element, right, where it's like, what do I want to kind of preserve and record as the record of who I am? I think there is this amazing opportunity, which is a part of what really drew me to the piece you created, around, balancing the inequity in our historical record. And so there are, so many stories of groups of people, communities, individuals, who have not been given space or air in the way we teach history. And I think as any listener of this show will know, I'm a student of history, and I think it's really important to reflect regularly on our history and how are we recording it, who's getting to tell the story, who's empowered to tell those stories, how do we go back and modify some of the accounts that are really told from one particular point of view. And so to me, the idea of, it was just so powerful to me to see the piece of art that you created, because it represented all of those things to me, like the idea that, we can, through community empowerment, create this record. Each individual can create, with pieces like the one that you have, create this record of a community that was lost to history and that isn't spoken about, in the way that that other parts of our community or society are and have been. And this is true. I'm thinking globally about this, right? I'm thinking globally about this phenomenon of the conqueror telling the story and what happens then to the historical fossil record, if you will, of those who were not in that position. So it looks like we have someone else coming on up. So Erica, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Erican. I am building a community alongside Cuy called Crypto for Black Economic Empowerment. Lethabo, huge congratulations on you just stepping out and creating all the great work that you have. I lived in South Africa a few years back, and it's one of the richest places culturally for artistic expression. So I'm excited to get behind you, mobilize behind you, and make it clear that across Africa, our artistic expression and the demand for African creativity is this now being the best time to capitalize. I just have a comment, honestly, and it's around just the drop that we mobilized around for Micah, is that I think what's important in art, money, and power is our relationship with money, which everyone has kind of relationship. And I think the importance of design as we create the future of the internet, as NFTs reveal themselves as being incredibly lucrative. I think designing for community, designing for people to learn and understand more as they are experiencing is really meaningful, and being able to take stock of the various marketplaces for NFTs, it shows that we still have a ways to bring everybody along with us as we go on this movement. So I just wanted to call out the importance of design, and actually that the way we come together and the way we make art available being really important and powerful and lucrative and creative and artistic. So that's all. Thank you.
And just one comment that I'd add, thanks, Eric, is like, one of the really interesting things that we've seen as we've really started trying to connect, Black leaders in crypto, entrepreneurs, builders, investors across the world, is kind of crypto is bringing together Black people across continents. And so there's so much activity that's happening, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Brazil, and this notion of a global Black diaspora and how kind of Black culture kind of ties Black people together across the world. There haven't been a lot of great ways to manifest that. And I think crypto and Bitcoin has been one where Nigeria is one of the most active markets in terms of adoption and interest. And Black Americans increasingly have been very active due to many leaders, Isaiah, Lamar, and others that are really driving the message around Bitcoin. Crypto art feels like just this next opportunity that we're kind of seeing the ability for Black artists all across the world and Black people to support other Black people from across the world. And so there's more interaction that's happening between Black people in the United States and Black people in South Africa and Black people in Nigeria than I've ever seen before. And I think crypto is becoming this bridge of a global digital economy and new form of commerce that's connecting, that is going to be really exciting to see where it goes.
So I want to just first of all thank Erican for highlighting this concept of the relationship with money as well, and having your response to that, Cuy, is really relevant. It also harkens back, Sheila, to the fact that our very first Money Reimagined show, we had Nikki Enright on.
The Globo.
The Globo, a mixed media artist. I will even hold up a Globo.
My Globos are hanging up. Yeah, I'm not in the
Globo.
right room, but I've got my
not
Globos
right.
framed.
No one can see this on Clubhouse, but I'm putting it on the video, although the background is confusing it. And yeah, it's an artistic form around money that speaks to this, the fact that it is an imagined concept, and that we build stories around money that then give it its power. So I see so much that is radical about crypto because it enables us to tell different stories about things. But that, I'm going to use that as a bizarre segue to ask a question of you, Lethabo, in relation to, I suppose, what's always been tension between contemporary artists and, you know, that has, because the value of you know, old art is often in its provenance, that it has this history, this record, and it was you know, and that's where this kind of information record is critical, and the blockchain's role in that is, for some people in the fine art world, is seen as valuable. But contemporary artists have kind of, you know, obviously in addition to their talent, have often required of this person or that person to be launched into the public domain, and that strange awkward dependency, I think, is sometimes there. The beauty, it seems to me, of the crypto environment, and to Cuy's point, that anybody can step in now and kind of be supporting artists through this process, seems very, very liberating. But I was also just noticing that what's happening in the collector space, in a Twitter feed from somebody a couple of days ago, talking about what they were choosing to buy. And they were buying up crypto punks, for example, and they were buying up very early generative art. And their argument was that in, you know, a few years' time, when digital art is truly a thing and NFTs are truly a thing, people are going to look back and say, okay, this was the very first thing. The crypto punks were the. But I'm just wondering whether, you know, do we run the risk of just recreating the old, I suppose, bias towards history and an old initial establishment, or is this a radically new environment? I mean, and how do we deal with that?
I think, how do I put this? I think it'll be dependent. I think it'll be dependent on a lot of things. I think when we, in a couple of years, when we look back into digital art, maybe crypto punks might be sort of the main thing that we're looking at. But I think as a person, it's important to always try and do your own research. I think also with art, you know, just your own research, not like there was only the Mona Lisa piece at the time that it was created, but it's quite popular. So I think I think it's sort of the same thing with crypto art. I think if you have that much interest and you dig deeper into it, even if it's CryptoPunks that lead you into it, I think you'll realize that there's a lot more contributing things that led to where digital art will be then.
I think one of the exciting things for me is it feels like it's up to collectors. And as collectors come into the space, you know, there's just such a small number of people who are collecting NFTs in crypto art. And it makes sense that the initial collectors are, you know, people who've been in crypto for a while. And so crypto punks, you know, kind of become the status signal of something for people who've been in crypto. But for new collectors coming in, you know, there's not as much context of kind of why a crypto punk is valuable. And so I think at the end of the day, what collectors are buying are stories. You know, they're buying experiences. And I think that, you know, while CryptoPunks is one thing that's new, There will be plenty of other interesting new things. The first, collaboration with a bot that Lethabo does, and like, it's collectors can start to mobilize in a way that they've never mobilized before. And I don't know much about the traditional art world. I haven't spent any time in it, but I would imagine that it's kind of small individual, collectors who, they have a lot of money and they're deciding who they're going to collect. We haven't really seen 1 million, 10 million, 100 million people say, I only have $10, but I'm going to direct that towards an artist that represents a story and represents some principles and a movement that resonate with me. And so when you kind of, create that low barrier to entry, I think what becomes popular and what becomes valuable, it's no longer just what a few people with a lot of money think. It can be what many people with a little bit of money think. And I think that's what happens with memes. Like, it's the same thing as a meme. It's not a few rich people decided they like a meme. It's the world decides they like a meme, and then that becomes valuable. And now, memes can be owned. Art can spread like a meme, and that creates so many opportunities for new things that happen to then have the perceived value that something like a CryptoPunks has had because it's the first.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point that you made to start with there as well, Cuy, about the fact that, yeah, there's traditional crypto folks, and crypto time, of course, moves very quickly. So, if you've been in crypto for 10 years, you've been around for, and so, the idea that, you're buying a bit of history, but the nice thing about this moment, at least the way it appears to me, is it's suddenly opening up this space to a wide group of people. So people who are coming in as part of this new wave are almost redefining history. It's like this sort of acceleration of the process. So I suppose I'd just like you to and the beauty of it is we don't know where it's. Nonetheless, I'm going to throw a difficult question to both of you. Is like, where does this go? Like, what do you think is the big driver right now? What is exciting you in terms of artistic forms and creativity that's emerging out of this that you see as the big trend of the next year or so? Maybe Lethabo, you could grab that if you can.
I think what's really exciting about this space is just the accessibility of collector to artist and artist to collector. And I think when it comes to just the future of NFTs, I think not just thinking about the next year, but sort of like just maybe 10 years down the line. Thing is, what I'm trying to say is that our younger generation are mostly on our phones, tablets, so sort of like we do everything on technological devices, meaning that art eventually will be something, digital art will be something that it would be of more interest. And so obviously NFTs will follow. So I think when it comes to the future of NFTs, I think it'll be definitely more popular, especially when our younger generation gets older and become adults and have their own financial freedom. So yeah.
Cuy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, it's less about individual art. It's more about the aspect that this is a social movement. Buying Black crypto art is activism, and I think as people recognize, by supporting Black artists, by providing them with resources, you're kind of amplifying work that has been hidden for many years, for decades, forever. And then what that leads to is they then support other Black artists. Lethabo is now a role model. She is supporting other artists. And so I think it is an investment that both has a significant opportunity to be able to increase in value, and it's an investment in attacking racial wealth disparities. And instead of looking backwards towards physical property and all of the redlining and structural disadvantages that Black people and other underserved communities have had, looking forward towards digital property and digital ownership, and how can we ensure that as these new digital economies emerge, we get the choice of who do we want to support, what principles are important to us, And then there's amazing people like Lethabo and Micah that are creating work that speaks directly to those principles. So I'm excited to figure out how we can bring more people into this space, how we can onboard more artists, and how we can have more collective social expression by supporting Black crypto art.
I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to close, Cuy. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that to me, what's so exciting about this over the longer term is what it's going to open up in terms of economic empowerment, particularly for the Black community. But for the artistic community as a general matter as well, which I think is it's the opportunity to level the playing field in an environment that has not historically honored the immediacy, the immediate need of artists to generate income, frankly, so they can keep creating, right? So they can focus on this full time and not have it be, Lethabo, to your early days, right? You're dabbling in it a bit, and now you can, one hopes, like over the course of time, this is going to be very lucrative for you, which is beyond well deserved. But I hope that is indicative of what's going to happen to a much broader community. I will, I'll wrap just by commenting on my very favorite topic I always bring up, which is, governance, right? And so I think a lot of what so many of us were drawn to the crypto space because of the new models of governance it provides. And governance really leads to these models around stakeholder engagement, empowerment. How do you create a chain of empowerment? So by empowering one artist, you're then empowering a whole community of artists. You're empowering a movement. You're empowering and creating visibility to a movement that can ultimately really help raise awareness about all kinds of other causes, all kinds of other injustices, whatever it might be. And to me, that is what is extraordinarily powerful about crypto as a general matter and about NFTs and what I'm focusing on in the future, Michael, to answer your question going forward. So with that, we will be hanging out on Clubhouse for a bit, but thank you, everyone. I will be wrapping the recording now, and then we'll switch over fully onto Clubhouse. So we'll kind of unmute over there and hang out for a bit to take any further comments or questions or anyone who wants to join us on stage. But thank you so much to our guests, Lethabo Huma and Cuy Sheffield, for joining us on this week's Money Reimagined. Thank you again to everyone listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.